Well, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here tonight. I'm Lani Parr with the Community Engagement and Communications Division in the City Manager's Office. And I'd like to also introduce, is Mara in the house? Mara Keeley is the one that sends you all the helpful emails each month from our team. And so if you're not getting them, there's Mara. Please let us know, and we want to figure out how to make sure we get your contact information updated. So this is our third year hosting a board retreat. And who was here last year? All right. So you know what we have now? We have light. We had a huge storm that we endured, and we learned a few fun facts about this building, that we have 45 minutes of backup battery. So weather looks good for tonight. So we're in the clear. Why did I do that? I also want to welcome our new board members. We have about a third of you are new faces to the team, and we just want to say thank you for signing up and being part of the boards and commissions. And for those of you that came back, thank you for giving this evening. We know your time is so precious. And so we've got an amazing lineup for you tonight, and it's packed. So I'm just going to jump right in and introduce our Mayor Beatty. But before I'm going to hand her the mic, I want to share a few interesting facts about her. She was the first woman to serve as the mayor of Beaverton, originally elected in 2020 and reelected in 2024. But before becoming mayor, she spent 6 years on the Beaverton City Council and previously volunteered on one of the city boards and served as the vice chair. So she knows what it's like to be in your shoes. She's as a U.S. Army veteran who served in the Iraq War. She dedicated her career to public service in championing equity, affordability, and sustainability. And under her leadership, Beaverton has advanced housing affordability, expanded veteran services, and worked towards creating a more bikeable, walkable community. And her advocacy reaches way beyond Beaverton. She played a key role in passing Oregon's legislation to expand opportunities for veteran-owned businesses. And she also currently serves on the advisory board on the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which ensures local voices are impacting the national policy considerations and conversations. Mayor Beatty has secured millions in state and federal funding for Beaverton, building a thriving, inclusive community where families of all backgrounds can succeed here in Beaverton. And she does all this while raising 2 young daughters here alongside her husband, Major Ian Beatty. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm the talent. I can't be restricted to slides. They try to tell me what to say all the time, but Lani knows that's not possible. Thank you for joining us tonight. There's a million places you could be, but you chose to be here with us. It's kind of weird to have life-size me behind me as well. That's a good photo. It's definitely not AI. I will tell you that. Thank you for choosing to come tonight. We got a lot of interesting topics for you. I, of course, am the funny opener. We'll be closed by the attorney who will tell you everything you can't do. You should listen to her, though, because the thing that when you agreed to come volunteer at the city, it makes you a public official. And public officials have a lot of responsibility under the law, following open meeting laws, serial meetings. Our team is going to do everything possible to keep you out of trouble. We really pay attention to the decision-making boards, planning, traffic, budget. They're the ones under extreme scrutiny. All the other boards are fun, and you guys get to do a lot of cool things. Those boards have to read boring packets and listen to a lot of testimony. So if you're on one of those boards, thank you. It is hard, thankless work to serve on the budget committee, the planning commission, and making sure that our community values what that is coming for them. Now, the Art Commission, they have rad board meetings. Lots of good food. They get to give away money. It's super cool. The Bike Committee gets to host a really cool bike race. We think that's really awesome. And the Library Committee, when I served as a liaison to the council, my favorite thing was reading the customer comment cards. It is kind of like mean tweets, but written. Sometimes they're funny and sometimes full of really good information. But when the public gets to fill things out anonymously, it is really unscripted. That's 90% of the emails that come into the city council box. They're actually not anonymous. We track them and we know where you live. So just remember that. But you guys do have like an important role tonight. So part of back in 2020, when I got elected, the other things that voters decided was to change our form of government. So we made the mayor full-time. The mayor focuses on policy work, advocacy work, government relations, working with our special district park and fire and water. Tomorrow, I'll be in Salem all day working on our legislative agenda. Last week, I was in Washington, D.C. doing the same thing. And we hired our first city manager, Jenny, who's going to be talking today. She manages all the staff in the building, and most important job she has is implementing the council's vision and goals that we set throughout the year. She also manages the really tough budget that we have. And so when we decided to change the form of government, we, as in voters, voted for this change of government. The other thing we had to do was make sure that our boards and commissions matched everything that the council was doing and the city manager was doing. So part of the exercise you're going to do tonight is create your work plan for your boards that rolls up into the city manager's work plan that then answers to the council's vision and goals. And so the work that you're doing is really important. Some boards have been doing this for a lot longer. We obviously could not transition every single board at the same time. So some of you, this might be the second or third time you've participated. Other people on those boards might be the first time you're kind of creating this work plan. There's still some of the boards that we're working through. What does it mean? How do we make sure they're doing the right work? Traffic Commission's a great example of that. A lot of what they see on the Traffic Commission is problems that could be filtered out a different way. And we're starting to do that kind of really intense work with them as we go. So every board has a purpose. Every board brings value to the city, and it helps us. You are force multipliers in the work we do. There's 7 elected officials and hundreds of people like you that help the city do that work every day. At the end of the year in our budget document, Lanny actually puts a dollar amount to the service that you guys bring to the city. And it is really impactful. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of value you add to the city every single year. And we do that so we can not only justify why we do these boards so that you feel like there's a contribution beyond kind of the work that you're doing every day. The collective work that you guys do saves us a lot of money, and it helps us do things that are really important. The other thing that you guys are going to hear a little bit about tonight is the financial situation the city's in. And I know some of you are thinking, well, I've already heard this 1 or 2 times. Trust me, you're going to hear it a lot more. We need your guys' voice in the community to talk about the budget scenario. We're trying to figure out how to not be wonky. When I say something like Measure 5 and 50 impact how we do things, that doesn't sound really great. When I say that we can only raise property tax 3% a year, and what did your last year's finances look like? Did they raise more than 3% a year? That's a lot more understandable than me talking about Measure 5 and 50. So what we need you guys to do is kind of hear the information. This is the second or third time we're doing this presentation with this board, and we want to welcome some feedback so other community members can start learning what we learn. Now remember, the people in this room have immense access to government. You made it into the room, you figured out how to apply for a board, you interviewed in an intense meeting with the mayor of Beaverton, you were selected, you got the sandwich and the name tag, you've arrived. Listen, not everyone is like you. Not everyone has the time, the privilege, the ability to get in this room. We need you to take this message back to your communities, your churches, your mosques, where you hang out, your third space where you hang out when you're not doing city things. Maybe that's the library. Maybe that's a church. Maybe that's a park. Maybe that's your kid's baseball game. Maybe if you're like me and your kids go to Sexton Mountain in my 11 minutes of free time, I have to go there and help them do things. We need to talk to our community about the budget scenario we're in. The city council had our meeting last week where we decided to not refer to the voters a property tax increase. That is a really hard decision for us. So I've served over 12 years. The budget's never been as hard as it is right now. We've done the work. I hear sometimes as the mayor, well, you just need to tighten your belt, sharpen your pencils, get in their budget and cut the fat. We've done that. We've eliminated a lot of positions in the last 5 years. We've cut travel funds. We've cut excess funds. We did everything possible to fortify our staff. Now we're going to be in a much harder situation because it's not just about, it's structural, right? When your revenue is going like this and your expenses are going like this, it is a difficult position for us to be in. There's no cutting our way out of this. There's no way that the lines will come back together unless we start shedding 100 staff members a year. And you like living in Beaverton. That's why you're volunteering. My guess is you like our libraries. You like the neighborhoods. You like the feel. You like the safety. You like there not being trash on the road. You like that we prioritize dignity by having a shelter. You like that we built affordable housing for 10% of the population. That comes at a cost. And so what we're going to have to do this next year on the city council is decide where are our values, what are we going to protect, and what are we going to let go. So as you hear tonight's presentation about finances, give us some feedback. What would you want as a member that's maybe hearing this information for the first or second time? Or what might you think your neighbors want to know? When you're walking out to the mailbox and you talk about the city's financial problems, what do you think your neighbors want to know and understand? That's the kind of feedback we think would be helpful. And then you'll hear from the attorney who will keep everything good and light. And then you will hear from Sarah and you'll create your work plans. And then they'll come to the city manager and to the council. So what I want you to take away from tonight's meeting is I'm incredibly thankful that you choose to volunteer for the city of Beaverton. I really am. It's also a gateway drug to being an elected official. So the other thing that I'm looking for is now we have term limits on the city council. So we're always thinking about succession planning. And so one day you're eating a sandwich, learning about the budget. The next day you're at the council dais making decisions. I don't know what happens in between those things. That's up to you. But thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for choosing to volunteer, for bringing your talent to the city and how we do our work. And Beaverton is my daughter's hometown. It's the place that I love the most. I chose to move here after my time in the service because the Army gave me a lot of addresses, but it never gave me a home. And I think about my daughter and I think about this being their hometown, and we're making decisions for their future 20 years from now, your children's future. And we have to do everything possible to continue to make Beaverton the greatest place to live. Livability just named us the #2 best in the entire West to live. And it wasn't by accident. It's because people like you continue to do the work. And in true mayor fashion, I will take all the credit for us being on that list. So thank you for, oh yeah, I forgot. I have to remind you to come to our State of the City. It's here in Beaverton. We do desserts. Donuts are my love language. So if you don't want to come listen to me, come for the donuts. They're super great. We have a student team at Beaverton that produced all the films for us this year. We wrote all of the content with our city staff, and we think it's going to be one of the best State of the Cities yet. So please consider this your personal invitation from the mayor of Beaverton to join me and my family as I deliver my 5th State of the City. So thank you for joining us this evening. And here is Sarah Singer-Wilson.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Team Beaverton. Tonight's celebration is all about teamwork and inviting you in to do your work plans and start working as a team. So it's a little different than your typical meeting. Instead of jumping into agendas and updates, we're pressing pause to remember something important. While you serve on different boards and commissions, you're all part of the same team. Different positions, different strengths, but the same jersey. Each of you brings unique skills, perspectives, and lived experience to the work. And like any good team, Beaverton is strongest when those talents are connected, supported, and pulling in the same direction. So tonight's about getting everybody on the same roster, strengthening the locker room, understanding the rules of the game, and don't worry, there'll be no pop quizzes on public meeting law, and aligning around how we win together in the year ahead. So no tryouts tonight. If you're here, congratulations. You already made the team, and our goal is simply to help you feel supported, connected and clear about how your role helps to support Beaverton. So first, to get us started, we want to loosen up, have a little fun, and lean into what it means to show up for each other as Team Beaverton. And I'd like to invite you to just start with that piece of connection at your tables. So at your tables, you'll see some pom-poms. If anybody did cheerleading in the past, you're welcome to lead your team in a cheer. If that's not for you, you can also grab one of the 4 table topics out of those little centerpieces and start by just somebody be brave, grab a table topic and start the conversation off and go around and have a little conversation. Get to know one another, talk about the things that you love about Beaverton, what you're looking forward to in the year ahead. And we'll just take a few minutes for you all to just build those connections at your table. I just want to take a moment to just go through this agenda with you. Next, you're going to hear from your city manager talking about some governance-related topics and an overview of the city council's priorities for the year. That'll be really important because, again, as the mayor mentioned, the boards and commission work plans that you'll develop this spring are aligned with the city council's priorities. So pay close attention. If you need to jot down some notes, you've got these agenda cards at your table and a section for notes on the back. Like I said, no quizzes, but you will have some homework as you get into your board and commission work of developing those work plans. Then you'll hear from Elizabeth Coffey, your assistant city manager, about the fiscal sustainability updates. And we'll close it out with the city attorney talking about public meeting law. That's probably when you'll want to take the most notes to make sure you stay out of trouble. And then we're going to have some more fun. So you can have some more table topic conversation. And we're also going to do an activity called the Team Beaverton. We have these scoreboards developed for you over here about what it looks like to win in 2026, which will serve as the inspiration for the development of your work plan. So that's the game plan for tonight. And I don't want to delay it any further. So I'm going to turn it over to your city manager, Jenny Hariyama. Oh my God, I did it again. Hariyama, to talk about the governance overview and city council priorities. One of these years, I'm going to get it right.
That's okay. I always tell people, so my husband was in the Coast Guard years ago. He's a veteran, and they couldn't say my last name, and so they'd call him Harry Mama. So that's what you guys are going to remember. That's not my last name, Hariyama. A lot of people can't say it. It means Spring Mountain. So anyway, thank you. I'm Jenny Hariyama, city manager, and I always feel like such a great privilege for me to come and chat with you. But before I get started to talk a little bit about the form of government, I was kind of curious, how many people here are new to this annual board retreat? Okay, so a good chunk of you. And then I'm assuming the rest of you, if you're not staff, you've done this before. So some of the things that I might be sharing, you might have heard. We already heard about me, so we'll just go straight to the fun stuff. I love this stuff. So many of you are familiar that in 2020, the city approved a charter that changed the form of government. So before we had a strong mayor, and the strong mayor basically was the CEO of the city. So all of the budget, all of the overseeing of department heads, the hiring, firing, all of that was centralized with one person. And they shifted to the council manager form of government. And what that means is you hire a city manager, you hire a professional that is not an elected official, that is non-political, that has a level of expertise in managing organizations and large budgets. And so in this model, the council hires and fires 3 people. That's the city manager, the city attorney, and the judge. And then for the city manager, I oversee the entire organization, absent of the judges and absent of the city attorney's staff. And so you see this little outline. It shows basically that I have oversight over functional areas in the city, and those are kind of self-explanatory. And basically what happens is that, as the mayor said, I'm responsible for providing an annual budget for the council each year. It's a recommended budget. So then the council looks at it, receives it with the budget committee, reviews it, and they decide whether they want to change it or accept it. And they usually do a little bit of both. And then it turns over to the committee for approval, and then the council ultimately will approve it sometime in June before July 1. And so essentially, I'm responsible for making sure that we have the things and the people to do the work to serve everyone in the community. But we want to talk a little bit about how you fit into all of this. And as you know, if you're new to the process, this might be not as familiar, but so in the charter, the mayor makes the recommendations. And so she interviews, and she probably has interviewed all of you and makes a recommendation to the council in terms of who should be on boards and commissions. And by the charter says, well, the council's going to have to ratify that, meaning they have to approve it. And so ultimately, the council will approve your appointments, all of your appointments. And so this is kind of the flow of all of the different commissions that the council oversees. And you could see there's flowing down to even Bureau at the bottom there. But a lot of questions I get, well, why do I matter? How can I make a difference? I'm advisory to the council. Sometimes I feel like, my voice isn't being heard. And I want to talk a little bit about the role that you play, because it's pretty significant, but sometimes it may not feel that way, particularly because you're not sitting down and talking to the council every day, but you're talking to staff, and that's where the wheels start moving. And so this is one of my favorite kind of graphs that I like to talk about government and also talk about kind of the role of the city manager and council. So the first thing that's important when you look at this is the council is the what. They like to tell me pretty much like, Jenny, this is what we want. So I want to give you an example. And I'm going to use the Arts Commission is going to like this one. So let's just say the council, because the Arts Commission made a recommendation, the council said this is a cool idea. Let's say that the Arts Commission made a recommendation and the council gave the city manager the what. And they said, you know what, we want all new development in the entire city to be required to install art when anything new is built. And they can either make an art piece, it could be a sculpture, it could be a statue, it could be a hanging, or they can contribute to an in lieu fee. All right, so the council has said the what. They said, Jenny, make that happen. So I'm the how, so I'm the operation. So I tell the council, well, this might have to go in the comprehensive plan. This might require an ordinance, might require a policy. It's going to cost X amount of dollars to be able to do and implement. We're going to have to talk to the Arts Commission again about how do we approach this and other commissions. We need an engagement plan and we need a communications plan. And here's the resources, council, that we need to do it. So I'm the how. So I'm kind of laying out, right, all the network of things that need to happen to get this over the goal line. And the employees are the who. They're really the boots on the ground. They're the folks that do the work, right? They'll coordinate with the Arts Commission. They will coordinate with the development community. They'll draft the ordinance. People like Grace here will draft a policy. They'll implement the program and they'll manage it, right? So they actually make it happen. And so where do you fit in all of this? You fit in at every single juncture here. You give feedback to the council. Sometimes that's indirect. Sometimes that's through your annual reporting. Sometimes it's through a concept that you'll bring up at one of your commission meetings. That trickles down to me and the employees. And that's where you actually make the most impact. You really are also advisory to the staff and the staff to you. And that is where kind of I see a lot of that teamwork in the center that happens. You don't know the number of times the staff tell me their interactions with you and your concepts and your ideas and your insight into what you're hearing from your neighbors. That matters because when we draft a policy, when we draft a procedure, when we create that engagement on social media, it has your lens all over it because all the information that you share at every single meeting, every single touch with an employee is filtered through the work that we do every day. And so when sometimes you may leave feeling that something didn't go left instead of going right, I want you to know, though, that your voices and your impacts are being felt through the city employees and that trickle to me actually quite often, which go to the council. And so we've been working, Lanny and I have been working through of how to make better connections points with you. And part of this process, which I think has been going on for at least 4 years, has been just that. So the show of people that are here and what the mayor said is just truly amazing. I think of your commitment. So this is kind of a nice graph, I think, of how we all work together. And if you take one, it doesn't work. And if you're not a part of it, it doesn't work. And so that's why I think the mayor was stressing how important it is for you all to be a part of this process. This last slide is kind of important because I was asking Lanny, I said, when we started this, I said, this meeting today was born out of the whole concept of us bringing the commissions together and developing work plans and all of that. And can you believe how many years have gone by since we've been doing this annual retreat with you all? And what the best thing that I learned about all of this was So, and I'll just make this up because I can't remember the exact commission. So, but like, the Planning Commission didn't know what the Arts Commission was doing. And then it wasn't until traffic was there. And so bringing you all through this process of being able to break bread and hang out and exchange ideas is just kind of the creativity and the innovation that we need. So I'm really pleased that we've been doing this for so many years and that we have such a good participation rate and turnout. But some of the things that I think that are important to just kind of highlight on this is that our whole process when if you remember, we did the commission assessment and the council was saying, we need to make this experience so much better for the volunteers because they're basically our bread and butter. And so this was kind of one of the motives of why we started the commission assessment process, which ultimately resulted in better efficiencies and work plans that align with the council's priorities, which I'll touch on in just a second, our budget, which is really important to make sure that your concepts, your ideas, what staff is doing aligns with the budget development process, and then ultimately with the council goals. And so I'll wrap with the goals. Council just adopted these this year. There are 5, and there's kind of a little bit of a 6th, and I'll explain what that is. But I think these are self-explanatory. You're going to hear a lot, of course, about fiscal sustainability, housing, and enhanced mobility. Those are really important to the council, particularly as we start talking more about Cooper Mountain and the annexation that will occur up there. Economic development, of course, a lot of that is seen through our downtown every day. And community safety is also on there because we've been talking about the importance of public safety. And frankly, and you'll hear a little bit maybe in our budget presentations, the cost of public safety. And part of that levy conversation that the council and the mayor have been talking about are directly related to how do we fund public safety so that we're not in a position of having to reduce or cut services. But that 6th item that I haven't mentioned yet is this top communication and engagement. One of the things that, and one of the reasons why the council is like, hey, we're going to do a timeout on the levy this year is because we've learned through some of the polling and engagement with the community is that they're not quite understanding our fiscal predicament. They think we have enough money and we're doing a great job, and we need to do a better job of explaining to them how we're funded, why we're short, what we've cut, what we've added, and why we've done all the things we've done. And this is why the mayor was talking about you being the ear to the ground and helping us figure out how do we best communicate. And so one of the overarching kind of 6 goals is to make sure that we're communicating all of these things in a way that land with the community. A lot of times, and I'll just talk about myself, sometimes government kind of falls flat in how they communicate, but you as residents know what is at the hearts and minds of your neighbors. And so this is why you need to come and tell Lanny or tell me or Elizabeth, that's not landing. This is what people are stuck on. We need to hear that over the next year so that we have a really robust storytelling, communications, engagement plan where we know that when we go out and we poll the community again, that those numbers are going to be higher and are going to tell us that they may not agree, but they have perspective now and they understand. And so that's our goal. So these are kind of the 5 focus areas. You're going to be learning more about these as you start developing your work plans and kind of plan for the next fiscal year. So I wanted to make sure that we got these in front of you. And as the mayor said, there will be a council work plan that ties in both your work plans and the department's work plans to make sure that we're all kind of fixated on the same North Star. So with that, I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Coffey. She is the assistant city manager, and she's going to tell you everything and maybe more than you want to know about fiscal sustainability. So let's welcome Elizabeth.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here to learn a little bit about fiscal sustainability. I know it's not maybe the most riveting topic always, but it is definitely one of the key priorities for us here this year in Beaverton. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about property tax and funding limitations. We're going to go over kind of our growing structural deficit. And then we're going to talk about what are we doing about this, what's our plan for moving forward, and what's our timeline and next steps. And so the mayor kind of teed this all up very nicely for me. And so one of the key reasons, why are we here? Why are we talking about financial sustainability? And that really has to do with some limitations that we have on the money that we're bringing into the city. About 54% of our revenue in our general fund, which funds our police department, community development, economic development, and many other foundational services, is made up of property taxes. And many years ago, the voters in Oregon put in place limitations on how property taxes are collected here in the state. And so there's a couple limitations. One, they replaced the existing tax levies with some much lower permanent tax rates. And then properties are taxed on their assessed value rather than the value that their house might sell for if they put it on the market. And Oregon is really unique in this way. Most states that have some limitations on property taxes will true up the value that you're taxed on to that real market value when the house sells, but that's really not the case here in Oregon. And so that assessed value is really limited at a 3% growth per year. And then we also have limits as a government organization about how much total taxes that we can collect. And so in addition to the city property tax rate, as well as the county and the many special districts here in Beaverton, we are all capped about how much total tax rate that we can collect. So all that together has really ended up constraining our ability to really collect revenue at a time that our expenses are climbing a lot higher. And so we're definitely not the only ones in Oregon facing this. If you look at 7 similarly sized cities across the state, Beaverton being one of them, we all have general fund deficits that range from about $6 million to $15 million. And Beaverton is pretty unique. We are the only city out of those 7 cities that either doesn't have a local option levy or some sort of services fee. And 6 out of the 7 cities are currently exploring additional new revenue and looking at things like fees, one-time funds, and then also hiring freezes and reducing staff. And so many of you have probably seen this graph before, but it's always a helpful one to show. And since the last time you saw it, it's probably been updated. There are lots of special districts here in Beaverton, and lots of them have recently gone out for renewals of their operating levies. But a lot of your neighbors might not know that out for every dollar of property taxes collected, Beaverton only receives 21 cents. And that funds, again, those really key services: police, library, community development, and engagement. And the rest of that dollar is divided up between Washington County, the school district, Tualatin Valley Parks and Rec, and some of the other special districts here in Beaverton. So this is a graph that kind of shows at a high level what is going on in our general fund. And so if you look at the graph, in the top part of the graph, the green represents the total revenues coming in, and you can see that that's not growing very fast. And the orange line represents our expenses, and you can see that that's growing very steeply. And a key reason for that really is a couple of key cost drivers. One is the cost of healthcare. In just this fiscal year, the healthcare cost increases cost our general fund an additional $1.3 million, and that was after our staff negotiated down the rate significantly. PERS retirement costs are another key driver of costs that are beyond our control. Those cost the general fund about $1 million extra this year. And then there's also just general cost of living increases. And what you might notice on the graph is that in fiscal year 23, the gap between the green line and the orange line, our expenses and our revenue, is pretty small. And it kind of looks a little bit like we haven't had a problem until recently. But what that line really represents is the really hard work by our city council and our city manager to really correct the problem. So they adopted a fiscal sustainability action plan in 2022. It had a number of actions on it, specifically mostly geared towards expense reduction. And through that, they were able to really narrow that gap. And what this graph shows you is that absent any action being taken in fiscal year 26-27, that starts in July of this year, we're facing about a $15 million gap in our general fund. Now, that's kind of our worst case scenario. We know that the budget will account for kind of all of our staff positions filled 100% of the year, for example. Sometimes projects get delayed, so we might be able to whittle that deficit down. But regardless, we know that we have a big problem that we need to tackle. The bottom graph will show you the light blue line shows you kind of our savings account or our ending fund balance. And the kind of purple dark blue line shows you what's our target. So our city council, through our financial policies, sets a target for about 2 months of operating reserves that we should keep in our ending fund balance. And again, you can see that those lines are pretty close together. We've either met or slightly exceeded our target thanks to the hard work of the city over the last couple of years. But if we were to dip into that fund balance into our savings account too much, you can see how it really rapidly goes down from there. And we would have a problem if that's what we relied on. So I mentioned that we have a fiscal sustainability action plan in place, and we have made significant progress over the last couple of years. We have reduced our expenses by $9 million. The mayor mentioned tightening our belts. This is a little bit beyond us tightening our belts. We've made some pretty significant reductions. We've eliminated 32 staff positions, and we have also conducted a fee study and made sure that we're charging the full amount of property taxes that we're authorized to do. So now we're at the point where we are looking at our fiscal sustainability plan. We have met 90% of our expense reduction goals, and expense reductions are still a strategy that we're going to be considering moving forward. But we need to develop a revised fiscal sustainability action plan in order to really tackle the challenge that we have ahead. So council has some short, medium, long-term goals. In the short term, the mayor mentioned that the council's not pursuing a local option levy in 2026, and they're considering that for potentially of May 2027. They are continuing to have discussions around a potential service fee. Lots of cities have fees on their utility bill that charge for either their general operations, public safety, transportation. And so council is considering a potential general operations service fee, and we're in the process of researching that, and we'll come back to council with more information in early March. We are also looking at a transportation utility fee. So our street fund that covers our street maintenance is also seeing similar cost challenges because the cost for construction has gone up quite a bit over the last couple of years. But we know that if we don't maintain the backlog of our streets, it's far more expensive to have to rebuild that street from scratch. So it's much more prudent for us to keep maintaining that over time. We are looking at a couple of other things, a potential transient lodging tax increase, and that we are doing a soft hiring freeze, really being mindful about the positions that we fill, and then really looking at service prioritization, looking at the services that we offer, what is required, what level of service are we providing, and then what would the impact be of further reductions to that service. I have here in the slide why are we exploring revenue options? We get asked that a lot. And budget reductions are definitely still a tool that's in our toolbox. But the scale of the deficit is large enough that just solving it through one tool is not very practical. So we're looking at using a blended approach of both revenue tools as well as expense reduction. And you can see here on the screen the example. If we were to take a $10 million cut and just cut staff, we would be cutting anywhere from 42 to 75 employees, which would be a significant impact on service delivery to the community. And we're trying to be very strategic and try to preserve as many services as we can because the community has told us that we're generally doing a good job in providing those services. And then we have some medium-term actions. We're looking at potentially increasing our franchise fee, which is the fee that utilities pay to use our right-of-way. We are putting a significant focus on our library services as well. They are also facing some financial challenges, and we want to make sure to develop a long-term plan for that service. And then healthcare is one of the key drivers of costs, as I mentioned. So we're really looking at, should we change the design of our healthcare plans? And do we need to explore future cost sharing? And then long-term, I always get asked if property tax reform is on our legislative agenda, and it always is. And we're continuing to work on that at the state level, and then maybe consider a potential insurance pooling with some other jurisdictions. So next steps in January and March is really kind of our research time where we're talking with council about a bunch of these options. We've already discussed the potential levy and agreed that we're not pursuing that at this time. And we'll be coming back to them, as I mentioned, in early March. In April and May, we'll be finalizing the budget, and that will be adopted in June. And so you can always stay connected through beavertonoregon.gov /fiscal sustainability. We have all the latest updates there. And then there's some email addresses here on the screen where you can share your feedback. And so with that, I don't know if we have time for questions. Okay. So I'll open it up to questions if anybody has any questions.
I saw up there that you were doing a services assessment in your short term. I'm curious where you guys are at with that and if there's been any recommendations from that.
Yeah, so we are currently working through the services prioritization exercise. So our departments are currently filling that out, and we plan to go to council on March 10th. We're at the work session on that. So we don't have any concrete recommendations right now. What we're really trying to do, we're not going to be prioritizing services to say, hey, this service is number one and the most important, because that's going to really vary from resident to resident and from council member to council member. And so what we're really trying to do is just provide a lot more information to make more strategic decisions about the services that we're offering. And so we have a number of criteria that we've asked staff to look at for each service. So if we're required to offer the service, are we required to offer it at the same level that we're offering it? You know, is there a requirement that we have to respond within a certain time period? Maybe we could make reductions there that would be acceptable. Or, what services are discretionary that maybe we have a choice about whether or not we offer them and what would be the impact if we didn't. So those are some of the discussions that we're hoping to have with our council.
Yes, I'm on the Committee on Aging, and we've had our meetings in the city library. And I'm wondering if you're going to publicize a little bit more of this wonderful space that we have over there for the city library and the services that the library produces.
Yeah, I mean, our library has a really amazing communications team that does a wide variety of different social media posts and e-newsletters. We are currently working on a library strategic plan, and we got a tremendous amount of community feedback. So we plan on having some discussions with our council about kind of the strategic direction of the library. And then, of course, continuing to promote the services that we offer as we work on that long-term plan.
Hi. So in my NAC, in our neighborhood, there's somebody who, anytime some group comes in to say, hey, we've got a, bond measure coming up, something like that, this neighbor, and I'm just going to sort of challenge a little, and I don't necessarily want you to answer necessarily, but maybe to be prepared for, always gives a litany of how difficult it is to live affordably in the city, how he has a child and a grandchild not able to, afford to live in the city of Beaverton. So I'm not necessarily wanting you to come up with the best answer now that I could take it back to him, because I guarantee he'll probably raise it anyway if it comes to one of those. But just to be prepared for some sort of concept like that, of how you would answer a question like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Curious, so the short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, they all involved proposed fees, and I'll be honest, I'm a Beaverton resident. Fees don't sound great to me. I'm curious, what other methods can we implore to generate revenue? How do we bring business to build an awesome new building, and boom, there's another, let's do that times 40, 50, awesome new building. I'm simplifying it, obviously, but there's other ways of generating revenue than fees.
Yeah, and we are trying to vary the impact of some of the revenue options. So, that's one of the reasons that council's really interested in a transient lodging tax potential increase, because that would really hit visitors to Beaverton more so than our residents. So we are trying to be a little bit mindful of kind of who the fees are charged to and what that impact would be. And then we are working on our economic development strategy. And so lots of focus in the last couple of years has really been around building this really vibrant restaurant kind of community that's attracted a lot of restaurants from other jurisdictions. And now we've really been doing some community engagement and surveying to really figure out what's the next phase of that and what are the businesses that we really want to attract here, so that we can continue to, primarily really make it a vibrant place to live and work. But a consequence of that could be, increased tax base as well.
I was just curious, from your perspective, what are the primary causes of the deficit?
I mean, Jenny mentioned that that key piece of the 3 interlock circles are really the who, right? I mean, we really rely on our employees to actually deliver the service that our community values. And the key cost drivers really are related to that. And so primarily healthcare, retirement costs, and then just general cost of living increases. So between healthcare and retirement costs alone, that was a $2+ million increase to our general fund just this year. And those kind of compound over time. And that's a much bigger increase proportionally than our revenue is bringing in.
Hello. I'm over here.
Thank you.
I moved here from another part of the country several years ago, and where I lived, one had to actually have a city sticker. Another fee, of course, but a city sticker just to have your vehicle in downtown if that's where you worked or if you were driving. So it served two purposes. It reduced the number of people who were driving into a particular area. And if you lived elsewhere, then you were going to pay more for said sticker. Has there been a study to incorporate whether or not that could at least contribute, something like that, to contribute to bringing in some additional revenue?
Thanks. That's an interesting idea. We'll have to look more into that. I'm not aware of any particular studies on that here in Beaverton. So we are kind of looking at this point, we're really focused in the short term on really kind of large scale revenue opportunities, right? And so we're hoping to kind of really find those potential revenue options that might bring in, $1 million plus to really kind of eat away at the deficit. But I will make a note of that.
Hi, my name is Carolina. I'm in the Beaverton Arts Commission. And I moved to Beaverton 3 years ago from California. I know a lot of my neighbors are also from California, and there's a lot of neighborhood conversations, especially with my street in particular. We're the youngest family in the street. Our neighbors are mostly retirees. And I hear often when I talk about the deficit, why is Nike not paying taxes is a very common complaint. I lived in Emeryville for a number of years. The city of Emeryville taxes Pixar heavily. In fact, Pixar has established a number of services for the city. I understand that there's a 30-year deal from 2012 with the state for Nike, and I understand that they're in an unincorporated part of the city, but their employees live in Beaverton and they benefit from our services and from our city. I'm wondering if that's been discussed, if there's another way that we can basically get Nike to help us out, because they have a lot of money.
Yeah, I think I've gotten that question every time I've given this presentation recently. As you mentioned, there is that agreement in place at the state level where we're not allowed to annex them into Beaverton for a certain period of time. So at this moment, what council has really been focused on and spent the most time discussing has really been those short-term options. But we've definitely heard from enough people that we'll, add it to the potential list of long-term strategies to discuss.
My question was about annexing the neighborhoods that are unincorporated Washington County, and if there was a possibility of doing that, so at least the property taxes for those regions could be included, and then I could vote for Beaverton City Council members, Beaverton City Mayor, and actually be able to have a say in the town that I live in.
Yeah, thank you. That's another question that I think we've been asked every time we've been out recently. And Washington County is currently actually conducting a study of the unincorporated areas, not just here in Beaverton, but across the county. And so the analysis that's being done right now is really kind of what would be involved in that. And, what would the trade-off be? Because there would be increased property tax revenue, but as we know, there are structural issues with how much that revenue can grow. And on the flip side, what are the services that we would need to provide to those newly incorporated areas, and how would the two of those pencil? So I don't want anyone to get too excited. If you're excited about annexing, or if you don't want to get annexed into Beaverton, it's really kind of just the beginning of that conversation and that study, but that is a conversation that's going on.
Hi, I'm Todd Adams. I'm with the Planning Commission. I'm the chair. My question is, with the potential levy, have you discussed how you're going to structure that? What does that look like?
The last discussions that we had with our council, and this could change, between now and next year, but our voter engagement that we did really showed that, public safety is a key concern for voters, and that really is, a key, the largest expense in our general fund. And so the thought was really to structure it around our police services and really focus on foundational services. So continuing to respond in a timely manner to 911 calls. We have a really great response time to emergencies. Continuing and maybe being able to restore our participation in the mental health response team that pairs a specialized trained officer with a mental health clinician. And then maybe kind of using the levy to potentially pay for some upgraded body-worn cameras. But really focused on core public safety services was that initial thought.
Hi, Ryan Hendricks, Beaverton Arts Commission. You had mentioned special districts. What types of special districts have been considered, if any, at this point?
Here in Beaverton, we have not been considering any new special districts because there are so many that already exist. But there are cities across the state that are considering whether or not a special district would be helpful for them and their financial situation, and kind of doing that analysis. So nothing currently on the table for Beaverton specifically for that.
Hey, hi. So as a fresher, I'm just curious about this. I know our budget is in a deficit, but in a curious way, I'm asking, if a budget is in deficit way, how the economy is running here. I know the government allocates some funds to the city, and if it is in deficit, while repay, will pay with any interest amount?
So Oregon budget law requires us to adopt a balanced budget. And so the budget that we adopt at the beginning of the fiscal year will not be in deficit. It will be shored up with either revenue or expense reduction or potentially one-time funds. And so right now what we're doing is developing the budget for fiscal year 26-27. And we're currently showing a deficit there because we're still in that development, and we need to figure out some solutions for how we kind of fill that deficit, because as you mentioned, yes, we still have to make payments on our debts and all of that type of thing. So we will be adopting a budget that's balanced. It's kind of what are the trade-offs and how do we get there?
Where I live, there's 2 new restaurants going in, which is wonderful because that's going to bring revenue and so forth. But the problem is parking is practically non-existent. And in that particular area, it's restricted to 2 hours at a time. And there's a parking patrol that goes around. So you're trying to draw people in to go to these restaurants and bring money in, but you don't have any way to take care of them parking.
Yeah, and so I know that parking management is one of the things that the city has been working on with kind of particularly in our downtown area. But I'm going to admit I'm not super familiar with our parking enforcement program. I don't know, Jenny, if there's anything that you want to add to that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's a great question. We've actually done some experiments working with businesses on trying to identify, because different areas in downtown have different needs, right? Some need longer parking, some need shorter parking. So we've been experimenting a little bit with that. So if we can get some of the cross streets and locations, we can probably get you more information, but just know that that's kind of something that we will do pilots with to figure out what works best for that particular area. And we've found that when we kind of do a town hall with our local businesses that are saying, hey, we need this to be 2.5 or 3 hours rather than 2 hours, that works. And so this may be a case of that. So if I can get your information and we can track that down and throw that in for consideration with our parking team, that would be helpful feedback.
All right, for the last question.
Hi, I'm Roz. I'm with the Beaverton Committee on Aging, but this is my 4th time going on a committee. So a few years back, we had a presentation about the Cooper Mountain area. And at that time, there was plans to have 5,000 homes built in that Cooper Mountain area. And at that time, it was not annexed into the city of Beaverton. First question, has that changed? Second question, if not, when? That's a lot of revenue. And we bear the brunt end of the traffic. We live in Murray Hill, okay? The traffic situation, the commercial situation, fire, safety, police, ambulance. What's going on with Cooper Mountain and schools?
Yeah, and so my understanding is it is annexed into Beaverton. I think staff that are in the room, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I see some staff nodding. And council's recently had some, I see actually one of our staff people in the back that's a little more knowledgeable than I am. So I'm going to let her answer this question. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be quick. So the Cooper Mountain Community Plan was approved by council in December 2024, and that included in-depth planning for housing, services, utilities, and transportation. Right now, we're working with property owners and developers who are interested in building some of the homes and businesses that will ultimately be developed there, but it is a gradual process. So far, none of those properties have yet annexed into the city, and it's not going to be all at once. It's going to be as individual property owners are ready to move forward with development, and there are utilities and infrastructure that has to be put in place first. So there are currently not 5,000 houses there. There has been no new development yet pursuant to the plan. It has to be built, and that is going to take time.
All right, I think that's all the time that we might have for questions, but thank you all so much for being such a great audience and for having so many engaging questions. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. I see some familiar faces and some new ones. Welcome. Thank you to Lainey for inviting me to give this presentation. I see some familiar faces, and it's good to have me back and give you a Cliffs Notes version of 3 topics tonight. And that is Oregon government ethics, public meetings law, as previously spotlighted, and the new thing of council rules of procedure. Let's move on to Oregon government ethics. So there are 3 main rules that the city of Beaverton wants all board members to know and understand. And there are more than these 3 rules, mind you, in Oregon government ethics, but they're not as broadly applicable to most board members, and so I'm not spotlighting those rules. But these are the 3 that are very important to highlight. The first one is prohibit use of office and official position, and I give this presentation to all new boards and commissions members in much more detail. So if you have any questions, I give a presentation to all new board members, and if you have any more detailed questions, I would recommend going to Lainey Parr and having her send you all the materials for that. So the first rule of prohibit use of official position, it says you cannot use or even attempt to use your position to get money or avoid paying for money that you would otherwise have needed to pay money for, except for your position at the city as a board member. For you, your family, or any businesses with which you're associated. So just think of how you interact with the city. Think of the family members who also are in the city and any businesses that you have that could potentially interact with your position here at the city. The second rule that we would like to highlight is that you have to declare all actual and potential conflicts of interests before the agenda item is called, and at all meetings it occurs. So
if it's an actual conflict of interest, you must declare it. You have to say it's an actual conflict of interest and a brief description of the nature of why it's an actual conflict of interest. And then you are done with that agenda item. You cannot participate. And best practices is to leave the room. So in all items of this nature, I would recommend reaching out to your board chair and your staff liaison in advance so that they can coordinate the potential ordering of agenda items so that you could leave when that agenda item is called. If it's a potential conflict of interest, meaning it's not certain that when you take this action as a board member, you are financially benefiting or avoiding financial detriment, you can just say, I have a potential conflict of interest and a brief description of what that is. And then you can still deliberate and vote. But the important part is for both instances, you have to declare it before the agenda item comes online, so to speak, and people are talking about it. And if it's continued to another board meeting, you have to declare it again. This is a common trap that people fall into. They say, oh, Grace, I totally declared it at this meeting. But if it's like a public hearing and the public hearing is continued to the next meeting, you still have to declare it at the start of that agenda item because it's a continuing obligation to notify people of this conflict of interest for both potential and actual conflicts of interest. So if you need assistance with forming how you're going to disclose this conflict of interest, our office is here to help, and you can direct your questions through Lanny, and I can get back to her about how to do it. Last rule that I would like to talk to everyone about is the gift limitation. So if there's a source who is interested in you because of what you're doing for the city as a board member, that is a source that has a gift limitation of $50 in one calendar year. So we're in the month of February, so January to December of this year, you cannot take more than $50 from this source who has his interest in you in this calendar year. It could be 10 $5 lattes, if $5 lattes are still a thing, or it could be one $50 discount of an expensive item. Just make sure to take good notes if you're ever going to do that, because if the Oregon Government Ethics comes knocking, you can provide good notes, which will make that investigator's case a lot easier, and it will be open and shut for that person. Again, this is the Cliff Notes version. I have very limited time with you. If you have more questions, there is like a 50-plus page guide for public officials that's published on the Oregon Government Ethics Commission's website. It is very detailed and helpful and has many examples of how it's been applied in the past and how they would consider these issues if a complaint were to be filed with the Ethics Commission. So highly recommended to go consult with this materials if you have questions, or ask Lanny and I can get back to you through her. Lastly, there's a phone number, which I find very surprising these days, and you can actually get a live person to call you back and talk about these things. So if you have questions that you don't want to ask Lanny or me, you can go directly to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, and they can have a trainer or an investigator answer the phone and guide you through how they're thinking about your particular situation. So those two resources, very good, and I've consulted them myself, so recommended. The next subject is public meetings law. This was a fairly large shift in 2024 in state law, in which they have now emphasized that serial communications outside of a public meeting is a violation of public meetings law, because the two main rules of public meetings law is that your meetings must be open to the public and appropriately noticed, and people are allowed to attend those meetings, which means, therefore, that no group or majority of board members can meet in private without noticing this meeting. So they're also following up and saying that if you have a serial communication amongst a majority of you, that could be considered meeting in private outside of a publicly noticed public meeting. So just be aware of all the different methods you could communicate with each other. I am continually surprised at how many communication methods there are. Teams, phone calls, cafe, group chats, just be aware of who you're talking to. And if you are talking to one other person, maybe talk about how you won't be talking to more people, because that could potentially lead to a violation. And all of this is helpful to note because there are now enforcement penalties. They've put more teeth into the law. So if people do violate public meetings law, it could potentially be a personal liability of up to $1,000 each violation. So I'm here to tell you of this issue so that if you have questions of how you communicate or how you should be noticing your meetings, we are here as staff to assist before any issues arise. There's also a new training requirement from 2024, and that says that you have to take an OGEC approved training once per term of office. Now, if you've seen me last year and if you've taken a training already, good job. You don't have to do one for the rest of your term of office. If you are new to this, however, I would recommend following the process to get trained up by the OGEC training. That's it. And then my last topic with you this evening is about council rules of procedure. Council adopted in March of last year a document that really outlines how council talks with each other and to the public. And I'm highlighting it to you today because we believe, the city believes, that it is a best practice to apply this document to its boards and commissions. So there are several sections in here that are applicable, but I'm going to be highlighting one in particular, which I think is well worth noting for boards and commissions, is to really come prepared to your meetings so that you're having a fully engaged discussion with each other, so that you're not trying to catch up at the time you're having your meeting, so that everyone can really come away feeling that they've had a good meeting because everyone was adequately prepared to talk about the issues at hand on the agenda. The second thing is to treat members with patience, courtesy, and civility, even when they disagree on what is best for the community. You get a group of 3 people together, they're going to come with their own lived experiences, with their own ways of seeing things, and with their own perspectives that may or may not align with what your perspective is. And this rule is really meant to encourage all of us to say that even though the other person disagrees with me, I can communicate respectfully and treat the other person with respect. I have a saying of disagreeing agreeably, in which both of us are fully engaged. We are trying to find common ground, and we're treating the other person still like a person that they are, with the fully formed opinions that they have. So that was memorialized in 4.3, and I think it's just well worth noting for all of us whenever we get heated in the moment of an agenda item that's taking up a lot of time and energy. The last one that I find really important is to say that personal comments or actions that are attended or reasonably could be construed to harm others are best avoided. It's just when people are heated, we want to make sure that we don't attack the person. We attack the issue fully. All of us are fully committed to making Beaverton a better place to live. And this rule really memorializes that, we should just be aware of how our comments could impact others in a really negative fashion, and just to avoid those types of comments as best we can. Because again, all of us are here because we want to make Beaverton a better place to live. And that's it. That was my Cliff's Notes version. Thank you, Lanny, again for inviting me. Again, if you have questions or need more resources, we have plenty of materials to send your way. Thank you, everyone.
Next up, I'm not going to talk to you too much about board work plans because we want to get you to work on actually developing some ideas for your work plans. But just to give you a quick overview of what it is, if you haven't been involved with the development of a work plan before, it aligns with the city council's goals and priorities. And so this is an opportunity for your board and commission to figure out what is it that we're going to work on in the year ahead that is in alignment with the council goals, priorities, and then make sure that those things get funded through the budget development process. So the most important thing on this slide is to note that there's a deadline of May 22nd of this year to have those work plans put together. And so that's what you'll be working on just as your boards convene here these next few months. Just to kind of give you an overview of what the whole timeline looks like for this process. Again, the council develops their goals and priorities in December. And then you have this kickoff that happens in February. The workshops will begin for the budget workshops will begin in March. And during that spring period, the boards are also working on their work plans. That development continues until they go to the council on the 22nd. And then by that time, those items, the work plan items, are fairly refined so that they can also be resourced as part of that budget that gets adopted in June. And then implementation starts through the summer, through the fall. And then in the fall, the process kind of starts all over again. They look at the accomplishments that have happened and start talking about some of the work that's happened in your boards and commissions over the course of the year. And you guys begin that process so that we can start all over again. So, Andy, anything else you'd highlight from that? Okay. Just a few things to highlight to maybe give you some inspiration from this last year. Lots of accomplishments. So anybody here from the Arts Commission, raise your hand. A couple notable accomplishments from the Arts Commission: 10 tiny dances, some art installations, a public arts map. So a round of applause for folks on the Arts Commission and the work they did. Who's here from the Committee on Aging? Yes, several representatives. Okay, well, the Beaverton Committee on Aging had several accomplishments, a couple notable ones. They hosted the community organizations at their monthly meetings to be informed of local resources for aging adults. And they also published some monthly articles in the Beaverton Resource Guide on aging-related issues. So a round of applause for our Committee on Aging. Who's here from the Committee on Community Involvement? All right, look at all those hands. Okay, Committee for Community Involvement worked on the Voters Forum, the Volunteer Fair. They reviewed and approved the neighborhood matching grants and provided feedback on city initiatives. So round of applause for our BCCI members. All right, Bicycle Advisory Committee. Yes, a few of you. They advised on the Transportation System Plan update. That's a big deal. And the Wayfinding System project, which provided feedback to Public Works. So round of applause for our Bicycle Advisory Committee. Few more. Who's here from Bureau? The Bureau budget. Yes, a couple members there. So they reviewed and discussed the proposed budget and got that to the Bureau board for its public hearing. So a round of applause for our Bureau members. The budget committee members here? Budget committee in the House. Okay. They forwarded and approved the budget to the City Council for adoption at the June 3rd meeting. And that entails, it's simple in this bullet point here, but it entails a lot of meetings, a lot of review, and a lot of work. So round of applause for the budget committee. Library Advisory Board. Who's here from our Library Advisory Board? Okay, several members. They approved the new meeting room policy. They stayed informed on funding and governance project, which will inform the next levy cycle, and supported some diverse programs. So One Book, One Beaverton, Storytime in multiple languages, English and Spanish Conversation Club, Digital Navigators, Summer Reading, all sorts of great stuff for the community. So round of applause for the Library Advisory Board. And then finally, last but not least, Bureau and URAC. Who do we have from those groups? Okay, we've got a couple members. They promoted development of community, public arts, and culture in the Urban Renewal District and guided the implementation of the voter-approved Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan and the Bureau Portfolio Redevelopment Strategy. So lots of exciting things. Round of applause for that team. Oh, and I'm sorry that we are not done. I forgot two important ones. The Planning Commission. So lots of big projects that they worked on. Who's here from Planning Commission? Okay, a couple of you in the back. Cooper Mountain Community Plan, the Milliken Way CIP project, and the Loop Transportation System Plan update. So round of applause for the Planning Commission members. And not to leave our Traffic Commission out. Who's here from Traffic Commission? All right, two members from Traffic Commission. They've made recommendations to council on some major issues, including assignment of the right-of-way at an intersection by the installation of stop signs or yield signs, installation of a crosswalk at a location not controlled by a stop sign, yield sign, or traffic sign, and they prioritized and reviewed the installation of traffic calming devices. So some really important stuff. So round of applause for our traffic. All right, so our activity, so I hope that gets you enthused and excited about some of the things maybe you want to be working on this next year. And this is our Beaverton Gold Medal Vision exercise. So working together with your tables, you may see we put some posters up around the room, and through the center of the room, since you guys don't have wall space, we'll be coming to you with some easels and then these boards as well. And what you're going to do, I know there are members from different boards and commissions at each of the tables, so this should work out fine. That we want you to highlight first, from your perspective, how does the community feel at the end of 2026? So thinking ahead a year from now, we're reporting back at maybe the same retreat. And what are you hoping the community's feeling 1 year from now? And then when you think about the work of your board and commission, what do you want to be known for in a year from now? What are you hoping that people will say about the work of your team? And then last on this section here, what are some of the results you'll be proud of? So think of maybe a specific accomplishment or something that you hope is going to show up in your work plan in the year ahead and something you will have achieved. So this is an idea to brainstorm some of the things that you hope to see 1 year from now. What's your vision for your board and commission? If you find there are not enough lines on the poster because you've got so many representatives of different boards and commissions at your table, feel free to write anywhere on the poster. Just help us so we know which section it falls in so that we can give this feedback to your liaisons. Questions about the activity? Choose somebody from your table that has legible handwriting. That would be helpful. And we'll provide some markers to you all. If you need help or assistance, myself and Sasha Cannell, my teammate over there, will be walking around to provide any support that you need. All right. Have fun, Team Beaverton. Go team. I won't play loud music, jock jam music, unless you're really needing more inspiration. So let me know. Okay, everybody. Sasha's going to be making her way around with the other microphone. And when she gets to your table, we want you to share one of your wins that you captured on the board. And when you share your win, she'll hand you a pom-pom so you can give a little cheer, and the rest of the group can also applaud as we get excited about the year ahead. I'm over here. Tell us about a win.
One of the wins I think I'm excited about is having people just be friendly and getting to know their community on a micro level. A lot of the problems we're facing are large, and it's hard as an individual to feel like you can have an impact. But if you know the 10 people in the houses around you, if we do get an ice storm, you can make an impact those 10 people. If somebody loses their job, the economy, we can't fix that as individual people, but you might be able to help that one person. And so finding ways to make kind of micro communities more stronger.
All right, Team Beaverton, we can cheer for that. Woo! Okay, next table.
All right, over here. Jennifer, you want to talk to us?
Okay, I'm going to pick a win over here. Fair and transparent. That's one thing that we had spoken about. Just being a city that is open and exposes ourselves in a good way. So, yeah.
All right, that's a win. Let's cheer for our Team Beaverton. Thank you, guys.
All right, let's give it up for this middle group right here. Kim, do you want to take the mic?
All right.
Diverse needs met efficiently.
Okay, that would be a win. All right,
We love
thank
it.
you.
All right, this
Who's up
table in the
next?
back here. Who wants to take the mic? All right, Andy.
Thanks. We had representation from a lot of different boards and commissions. So I would say one win would be continued participation in the voters forum. There's been some changes in how that's operating, but it's been a really well-received event. And we're looking forward to seeing continued participation.
All right, let's cheer for that win.
Take one. All right, this table in the back here. What's a win that you guys want to share about? Who wants to take the mic?
What?
Come on, Team Beaverton, somebody do it.
I guess we talked a lot about maintaining community engagement throughout all of these categories.
All right, that's a win. Let's cheer for that.
Woo. All right, this table over on the side here. Who wants to take the mic? All right, right here. Okay.
We had members of the library board and committee for community involvement. And so we focused a lot on events that both of our agencies, our groups have worked on to provide fun. So it was about fun.
All right, we could cheer for fun. Yes. Okay,
We love
next
it.
up.
All right, we got this group over here. So we've got Team Beaverton. Let's tell us about a win over here from Kathy, Kathleen, Kim, Steve, David, and Deborah.
A balanced budget approved in June.
Okay, we could cheer for that. Woo!
All right, we had also a table or someone take this board over here. Or do we still have this group? we're in?
H-tag group. Somebody from our H-tag group up here.
Oh, sorry. Maybe they headed out. I'll share one. So we had the H-tag. So they put more project team involvement. That's a win for that team. So let's share them.
All right, more project team involvement.
All right, and let's go to the middle here. All right, who wants to share a win?
We've got a lot of hyper-specific stuff, but mostly just like a thriving downtown would be a win.
All right, thriving downtown. We can cheer for that. And then is this our last table?
Our last table over here. Who wants to take the mic?
Look at them all pointing at somebody else.
I know. You guys are not being helpful.
I like the first one. We find new revenue resources.
New revenue resources. That would be a win. All right. Well, round of applause for all of Team Beaverton. We wish you all the best as you develop your work plans and pursue these wins in the year ahead. Lanny has some really important updates before you leave for tonight.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our presenters and all of you for a great night. Just a couple quick updates. The PowerPoint will be emailed out to you, and then we'll get the recording from TVC-TV and send that out as well. And we've got food you're welcome to take. We have to-go boxes out there. Please feel free to take some on your way out. And if you need parking validation passes for the Milliken Garage, we can help you out there as well. So just go to the check-in table for those passes. And with that, we are concluding tonight, and go Team Beaverton.